Right now, on a shelf somewhere in your house, there is a food you bought to protect your family that is quietly turning against you. You did everything right. You listened to the channels, you bought the bucket, you sealed it up, you stacked it in the closet, and you told yourself you were covered. And that bag, that can, that jar is sitting there slowly becoming something that won't feed you when you need it. In some cases, it'll do worse than not feed you. It'll make you weaker. It'll make you sick. And the cruelest part is, it'll look completely fine while it does it. I'm not here to tell you the preppers got it all wrong. They didn't. They got it half right. And in food storage, half right is more dangerous than wrong, because half right is the version you trust. Wrong, you'd throw out. Half right, you build your entire survival plan on top of. I learned this the hard way. Some of what I'm about to show you, I personally bought, personally stored, personally recommended to people I care about, before I understood what was actually happening inside those containers. So this is 9 survival foods that can quietly make you sick or fail you at the worst possible moment, and exactly what to store instead. Before we start, 3 things you need to hold on to. One of these 9 is in almost every beginner stockpile in the country, and it is the single item most likely to betray you, not because it spoils loudly, but because it spoils silently while looking perfect. Another one on this list is technically safe to eat, it'll fill your stomach, and it can still leave you weaker month after month than if you'd eaten less of it. I'll explain exactly why. And the worst offender of all isn't a food at all. It's a storage mistake that takes the right foods, the good ones, the ones I'm going to tell you to buy, and quietly turns them toxic. Nobody checks for it until it's too late, and I'm saving it for the very end. Now let me be clear about something. This is not fear-mongering, and this is not a doomsday channel. Every single item on this list is something real, something sensible, something a reasonable person stocked for good reasons. The problem was never the intention. The problem is the gap between what these foods promise on the shelf and what they actually deliver 18 months later in a hot closet. This is about being the person whose supplies actually work. The calm one. The one who opens the bucket in a real emergency and finds food, not a science experiment. So subscribe before we get into it, because the middle of a shortage is the worst possible time to discover your supplies were the problem. You want to know this now, while the shelves are still full and you can still fix it. Let's start at number 9. Number 9. Brown rice. The healthy choice that rots in the dark. This is the one that gets people because it feels like the smart, wholesome, responsible choice. Brown rice over white rice. More fiber, more minerals, more B vitamins. Every nutrition article you've ever read tells you brown is better, so naturally you reach for the 50-pound bag of brown rice and feel good about it. Here's the indictment. Brown rice is one of the worst long-term storage foods you can buy, and almost nobody warns you. The reason is the very thing that makes it healthier. Brown rice still has its bran layer and its germ intact, and those layers contain natural oils. Oils are fats, and fats oxidize. When fat meets oxygen over time, it goes rancid. So while your white rice sits there essentially immortal, your brown rice is on a clock from the day you buy it. Stored at room temperature, brown rice typically goes rancid in around 6 months to a year, not 25 years. Months. And here's the part that makes it sinister. Rancid food doesn't always announce itself the way mold does. There's a slow version where the oils degrade, the nutrients break down, and the rice just quietly loses its value and develops an off, bitter, paint-like taste. Rancid oils aren't usually the kind of thing that drops you in a day. They're the kind of thing that, eaten over weeks, can leave you feeling unwell and rob you of the nutrition you stored it for in the first place. You bought it for the extra nutrients. The storage destroys exactly those nutrients first. Store this instead. Plain white rice, or better yet, parboiled rice. White rice has the oily bran stripped off, which is exactly why it lasts. Stored cool and dry with oxygen absorbers, white rice can last 25 to 30 years. Parboiled rice is the upgrade most people have never heard of. It's been steamed under pressure before milling, which drives a chunk of those B vitamins, the thiamine, the niacin, into the grain's interior before the bran comes off. So you get nearly the shelf life of white rice, with a meaningfully better nutritional profile and a lower glycemic impact. And here's the surprising part. The less healthy white rice option is the one that actually keeps you healthier in a long emergency, because the nutrients you can still eat in year 3 beat the nutrients that went rancid in month 6. A bag of parboiled rice costs barely more than white. Pair it with beans for a complete protein, and you've solved nine's problem completely. Number 8. Whole wheat flour. The convenience that expires in your closet. This one feels even smarter than brown rice. You think, why store wheat berries and mess with a grinder when I can just store flour and be ready to bake the moment I need to? Convenience. Done. Move on. Same trap, slightly different shape. The moment wheat is ground into flour, the protective architecture of the grain is destroyed. In a whole intact wheat kernel, the oils in the germ are locked away and protected, which is why properly stored wheat berries last 25 to 30 years. Grind that kernel into flour, and you expose all of those oils to oxygen at once, across a huge surface area. The clock doesn't just start, it sprints. Whole wheat flour in warm storage can begin going rancid in a matter of months. Studies tracking whole wheat flour over a year of storage found significant breakdown of the fats and a measurable loss of vitamin E and other fat-soluble nutrients. So you've stored a food that's degrading the entire time, and the off flavors and reduced quality show up long before you ever plan to use it. Store this instead. Hard winter wheat berries, whole and intact, in food-grade buckets with oxygen absorbers. That's your 25 to 30-year foundation. And here's the part that stops people, so listen closely. You do not need a grain mill to start. Wheat berries cook whole, just like rice. 1 cup of berries, 3 cups of water, simmer 45 minutes to an hour, and you've got a chewy, filling grain bowl you can eat tonight. The mill is an upgrade you add later, not a requirement you need first. The surprising part here, and it's a nice one, freshly ground flour from stored berries is actually more nutritious than the bag of flour you'd have stored, because it hasn't spent months oxidizing in a warehouse and then months more in your closet. You're not just storing longer, you're eating better when the day comes. Number 7. Cooking oil. The fuel that quietly turns. Everyone stores oil, and they should. Fat is calorie-dense. It makes food palatable. It's essential for actually absorbing certain vitamins. The problem is which oil and how long you think you have. Most of the everyday oils people stockpile, the big cheap jugs of vegetable oil, the bottles of olive oil bought in bulk, are not the long-haul performers people assume. Oils oxidize. That's the same rancidity process from our last 2 items, except now it's the entire product, not just a layer. And rancid oil isn't a tastes a little off problem you can push through. Oxidized fats are exactly the kind of thing you don't want to be eating day after day in a situation where your body is already under stress and you can't easily replace anything. The trap is the gap between the printed date and the real-world clock. Heat, light, and oxygen accelerate everything, and a survival stockpile usually lives in conditions, warm closet, occasional temperature swings, that push oils toward rancidity faster than the label ever assumed. Store a jug of vegetable oil in a hot garage and it can turn well before you'd ever guess. Store this instead. 2 answers. For day-to-day storage and rotation, coconut oil and ghee are dramatically more stable than most liquid oils. Ghee is clarified butter with the milk solids removed, which is exactly what lets it sit at room temperature far longer than butter ever could, and you'll find it cheap at Indian grocery stores. Coconut oil's fat structure resists oxidation better than the polyunsaturated oils. And for true long-term, here's the move almost nobody makes. Don't store the oil, store the source. Whole nuts and seeds in the right form, or better yet, oil-rich foods you can press or use as needed. The surprising part of this whole item, the cheapest, most obvious oil in the store, the big clear jug, is usually the least stable thing you can put on a survival shelf. Buy stability, not volume. Number 6. Natural peanut butter. The protein that separates and sours. Peanut butter has a near-mythical status in prepping, and for fair reasons. It's calorie-dense, it's protein and fat in one jar. Kids eat it, you don't have to cook it. So people grab the good stuff, the natural kind, just peanuts and salt, oil pooling on top, and they feel virtuous about it. That natural jar is the problem. Natural peanut butter, with nothing but peanuts and their oils, is one of the shortest-lived versions you can store. Those are the same oils we keep coming back to, and with no stabilizers, they oxidize and go rancid, often within a year or 2, even in decent conditions, faster in heat. You'll know it by the sour, bitter, sharp smell. The good news is, rancid peanut butter is more of a quality and nutrition loss than an acute danger. The bad news is, you stored it for the nutrition, and rancidity is robbing you of it. There's a second, quieter issue worth knowing about. Peanuts can carry aflatoxin, a mold byproduct that develops under warm, humid storage. It's a real reason not to store peanut products in a hot, damp space and not to push way past freshness on cheap bulk product. Store this instead. Powdered peanut butter. This is one of the great unsung swaps. Most of the oil is pressed out, and it's that oil that goes rancid, so powdered peanut butter can last up to around 15 years sealed, versus the year or two you get from the natural jar. You add water when you want it, and it reconstitutes into something you can eat or bake with. You keep almost all the protein, you lose the time bomb. The surprising part? The healthiest, most natural-looking jar, the one with just peanuts and oil, is the worst long-term storage choice on the peanut shelf, and the processed-looking powder is the survivor. Quick thing before number 5, because it's coming up fast. After the next item, I'm going to show you a food that gets pulled and recalled more than almost anything else people stockpile, something that feels like the ultimate grab-and-go survival food, and it's probably already in your cart. Keep watching for that one. Number 5. Jerky and dried meat, the protein with the hidden short fuse. This feels unkillable. It's dried meat. Drying is preservation. People have preserved meat this way for thousands of years, so surely a bag of jerky is a forever food, right? It earns a permanent spot in the bug-out bag and gets forgotten. Here's the indictment. Most commercial and homemade jerky is not a long-term storage food at all. Drying removes most of the moisture, but it does not remove the fat. And the fat is the weak link again. Those oils go rancid, which is why typical jerky has a shelf life of around a year, not the decades people imagine. Pemmican, the traditional fat and meat survival food, does better but still lives in the 1 to 5 year range at room temperature, not the 20+ some people claim. And there's a sharper edge here. Improperly dried or improperly stored meat isn't just a rancidity problem. Meat is exactly the kind of low-acid, protein-rich food where, if moisture sneaks back in, you're now in genuine food safety territory, not just bad taste territory. That's a much higher stakes failure than a stale cracker. Store this instead. Freeze-dried meat in sealed number 10 cans. This is the version that actually delivers the decades. Freeze-drying removes almost all the moisture and, packed properly with oxygen removed, freeze-dried meats can last 20+ years. That's the real long-term protein. For nearer term, properly canned meats, think canned chicken, tuna, and the like, give you years of safe, sealed protein for a fraction of the freeze-dried price. The surprising part, the rugged, primal, this is what survival looks like food, the jerky, is one of the shortest-lived proteins on the shelf, and the sci-fi-looking freeze-dried can is the one that'll still feed you in 20 years. Number 4. Salty instant meals and bouillon-heavy kits. The water trap. This is the one I told you about up top. It's safe to eat, it'll fill your stomach, and it can quietly leave you worse off, and almost nobody plans for it. A huge share of beginner stockpiles end up built around extremely salty staples, the seasoning packet instant noodles, the bouillon cubes, the boxed flavored rice and pasta sides, the saltier instant meal kits. They're cheap, shelf-stable, and they taste like something, which is genuinely valuable. There's nothing wrong with having them. The problem is what happens when they become the base of your diet instead of an accent. High-sodium foods dramatically increase your body's water requirements. In normal life, that barely registers. You just drink when you're thirsty, and your kidneys handle the rest. But the entire point of a survival stockpile is a scenario where water might be the single most precious, most limited thing you have. If your food is salt-heavy and your water is rationed, you've built yourself a slow dehydration problem. The food keeps you fed and quietly works against your water supply at the same time. That's why I call it the water trap. It's the only item here that fails you not by spoiling, but by interacting badly with the rest of your plan. Store this instead. Don't throw the salty stuff out, just demote it and balance it. Build the base of your stores on low-sodium and naturally low-salt staples. Plain rice, plain beans, plain wheat, plain oats, and use the salty flavor items as the seasoning on top, not the meal itself. And here's the rule that actually matters. Budget your water to your sodium load. For every few high-sodium meals in your rotation, plan meaningful extra water per person per day, on top of your drinking baseline. Most people store food and water as two separate numbers. The truth is, they're one equation. The surprising part, the food on this list that's most likely to hurt you is also the one that's perfectly safe to eat. It doesn't have to spoil to be a problem. It just has to be the wrong proportion of your plan. Number 3. White flour and refined filler calories. The full stomach, empty body problem. This is the second item I flagged at the start, the one that fills you up and can still leave you weaker month after month. When people build a cheap bulk stockpile, they lean hard on refined starches, white flour, plain pasta, and similar. It makes sense on a spreadsheet. Maximum calories per dollar, long shelf life, everybody knows how to cook it. And calories do matter in a survival situation, so this isn't crazy. But here's the trap. A stockpile that's overwhelmingly refined starch gives you energy and almost nothing else. In a short emergency, a few days, a week, that's fine. Your body coasts on its reserves. But stretch it into weeks and months with little variety, and micronutrient gaps start opening up. The B vitamins, the minerals, the things stripped out during refining. You're eating, your stomach is full, and yet you're slowly running a nutritional deficit. Historically, populations that survived almost entirely on refined or polished grains developed real deficiency diseases. Full belly, failing body. That's the quiet harm. It never looks like starvation, so you don't see it coming. Store this instead. Whole food, intact staples that bring nutrients along with the calories. Wheat berries instead of white flour, as we covered. Whole oats. A serious stock of dried beans and lentils, which bring protein, fiber, and minerals, and which pair with rice to form a complete protein. And deliberately store nutrient insurance. Things like nutritional yeast for B vitamins, and a simple shelf-stable multivitamin as a backstop. Calories keep you alive for days. Nutrients keep you functional for months. The surprising part? The cheapest per-calorie option, the one that wins the spreadsheet, is the one most likely to quietly degrade your health in a long event. Buy calories and nutrients, not calories alone. Before item 2. One item left before number 1, and then I'm going to deliver on that final promise. The storage mistake that takes the good foods, the right ones, the ones I've been telling you to buy, and quietly turns them toxic. Stay with me, because this is the one that undoes everything else if you get it wrong. Number 2. Forever, canned goods and dented cans. The trust that fails silently. Canned food is the bedrock of almost every pantry, and for good reason. It's sealed, it's cooked, it's genuinely shelf-stable for years. So this isn't me telling you to stop storing cans. It's me telling you that canned is doing more trusting than you realize. 2 indictments here. First, the forever myth. Commercially canned food is safe for a long time, but the quality, the texture, the nutrients, the taste does degrade, and high-acid foods like canned tomatoes and fruit decline faster than you'd think. Still sealed is not the same as still good to eat in 15 years, especially for the acidic stuff. People treat a date on a can as a formality. For long-haul planning, it isn't. Second, and far more serious, is the danger almost everyone underestimates: botulism, especially from home-canned and damaged commercial cans. Here's the part that should make you sit up. The botulinum toxin is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. You cannot see it, smell it, or taste it. Even a tiny amount can be deadly. Low-acid foods, vegetables, beans, meats are exactly the high-risk category, and home-canned low-acid vegetables are the single most common cause of botulism outbreaks in the United States. And damaged cans matter. A bulging, leaking, badly dented, or rusted can is a warning you do not ignore, because that damage can be the sign of exactly the kind of growth you can't otherwise detect. Store this instead. 3 rules rather than a single swap. 1. For low-acid foods, trust commercial cans over home-canned unless you are properly trained and using a pressure canner and tested USDA recipes, because boiling water canning does not protect against botulism in low-acid foods. 2. Rotate your cans aggressively, eat and replace, especially the acidic ones, instead of treating them as a sealed time capsule. 3. Inspect every can and throw out anything bulging, leaking, badly dented, rusted, or that spurts when opened. No tasting, no, it's probably fine. The surprising part? The most trusted, most boring food in your entire stockpile is the one capable of the most serious harm, and it's the one people inspect the least. Number 1. Protein bars, meal bars, and snack kit stockpiles. The convenience that fails on every front. I put this at number 1 because it's the most seductive mistake, the one that feels the smartest, and it fails on more axes than anything else on this list. The pitch is irresistible. 1 bar, calories, protein, vitamins, no cooking, no water, no prep, just grab and eat. So people buy cases of protein bars and meal replacement bars and call their emergency food handled. It feels like the future of preparedness in a wrapper. Here's why it's number one. First, shelf life. Most protein and snack bars are built for a year, maybe a bit more, not for the long haul. They're a rotation item masquerading as a storage item, and they expire quietly in the bin you forgot about. Second, the fats. Many bars are loaded with oils and nut content, and we've spent this whole video on what oils do over time. They go rancid, and a rancid protein bar is an unpleasant, low-value thing to be relying on. Third, texture and degradation. Bars get hard, crumbly, chalky, and chemically off well before you'd want to bet a meal on them, especially through heat cycles. Fourth, and most important, the promise is the trap. A stockpile of bars feels complete, so people stop building. They've outsourced their entire food plan to the single most fragile, shortest-lived, heat-sensitive option on the shelf. That false sense of "I'm done" is the real danger. Store this instead. Build your plan on the durable foundation we've been describing: the intact grains, the beans and lentils, the freeze-dried protein in number 10 cans, the powdered peanut butter, the stable fats. Those are your decades. Then, if you love the convenience of bars, keep a small, actively rotated stash for the first hours and days of an emergency, the grab-and-run window, and eat and replace them constantly. Bars are a sprint food. Your stockpile needs to win a marathon. And the best part, the same theme that's run through this whole list. Every real replacement I've named is something you can start eating today. Cook the wheat berries this week. Try the parboiled rice. Reconstitute the powdered peanut butter. Get comfortable now while it's easy so that nothing on your shelf is a stranger when it actually matters. Now, the promise I've been holding since the very beginning. The worst offender. The thing that isn't a food at all. The storage mistake that takes the good foods, the right ones, the ones I just spent 20 minutes telling you to buy, and quietly turns them into something that fails you or makes you sick. It's the storage environment itself. And specifically, it's the three silent killers: heat, oxygen, and moisture. Here's why this is the real number one, the thing underneath everything else. Almost every failure in this entire video traces back to one of these three. Heat accelerates rancidity and degradation. The warm closet. The garage that hits 100 degrees in summer. That's why oils turn, why brown rice rots, why bars die. Oxygen is what fats react with to go rancid, and what spoilage organisms need, which is the entire reason oxygen absorbers exist. And moisture is the one that turns a quality problem into a danger problem, because moisture is what lets mold and bacteria grow in foods that were supposed to be bone dry and safe. You can buy a perfect stockpile, every item on the store this instead side of this video, and lose all of it by storing it on a shelf in a hot, humid space in its original thin packaging. The food doesn't announce its failure, it just quietly stops being what you paid for. So here's the system, and it's simple: cool, dark, dry, sealed. Store food in the coolest part of your home, a basement or interior closet, never the garage or the attic. Keep it out of light, get the air out. Food-grade buckets and Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for your long-term staples. Keep moisture out with proper seals and, where it helps, desiccant. And run a real first-in, first-out rotation. New stock to the back, oldest to the front, and actually eat from your stockpile so nothing sits long enough to fail in the dark. That's the thing nobody checks until it's too late. Not the food, the conditions around the food. So let's bring it home. This was never about paranoia. It's about competence. The difference between the person whose supplies quietly fail at the worst possible moment and the person who opens the bucket and finds exactly what they prepared is mostly just knowing what we covered today. 3 things to take with you. The indictment: the healthy, natural, convenient, and obvious choices: brown rice, whole wheat flour, natural peanut butter. The salty kits, the cans you never inspect, the bars you trusted, are often the ones that fail. The swaps: intact grains, parboiled rice, powdered peanut butter, freeze-dried and properly canned protein, stable fats, and real nutrients alongside your calories. And the foundation under all of it: cool, dark, dry, sealed, and rotated. You're not the person whose food betrays them when it counts. You're the one who checked. If you're going to audit your own stockpile this week, and I really hope you do, drop the word "fixed" in the comments. I want to see exactly who took this seriously, because that's the crowd that doesn't panic when the shelves go bare. And if this opened your eyes, the next video is the one you actually need now. Because once you know what not to store, the obvious question is what lasts the longest. I'm breaking down the foods that genuinely never expire. the handful of items that can outlive you in proper storage, and 2 of them are almost certainly in your kitchen right now. One of them you've probably been throwing away. Click that next, and I'll see you there.